kind of orient you just a little bit. This is representative of an open right eye, an open left eye, and then this is another right eye, and this is left eye. This is going to be before, when you shine the flashlight in, and this is going to be the result of shining the flashlight. This is going to be that test where if you ever go to the doctor and they shine a flashlight in your eye, they're looking for changes in response to your pupils. Okay, it's a way to look at nerve damage to either cranial nerve number 2 or cranial nerve number 3. It's called the pupillary light reflex. Going down here, this is going to be just a transverse section. Here are the eyeballs, right and left, with a nose, ears, optic nerve, optic chiasm, optic tract, lateral geniculate nucleus. Let's go ahead and label some of that. So here's your, and let's say this is the right side, okay, and this is the left side. And this is your lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus. Okay, it's going to be bilateral. Okay, this is going to be your optic nerve, cranial nerve number 2, optic chiasm, and your optic tract. It's kind of a review of all the things we've covered so far. And this is going to be a cross-section through a portion of the brain stem. I will tell you that this is that cerebral aqueduct. This is the red nucleus. And this are your cerebral peduncles. Anybody remember which portion of the brainstem this might be? Alex.
Actually, a question. How do you spell lateral geniculate?
G-E-N-I-C-U-L-A-T-E. No? Genu, like knee, a knee, right? It's a mid. Geniculate. Okay, what portion of the brainstem? So I'm talking cerebral aqueduct, the red nucleus, cerebral peduncles. What portion of the brainstem is that? Yes, the midbrain. Bless you. This is the midbrain. Awesome. Okay. Now, there's a portion of the midbrain that we've been saying the entire time, the superior colliculus, the inferior colliculus. I've been telling you that there are little bumps on the back of the brainstem, on the dorsal surface of the brainstem, and here they are. So here, this is in the region of the superior colliculus. There's going to be a specific nucleus here in the area. This is the superior colliculus. That specific nucleus is going to be your pretectal, tectal, T-E-C-T-A-L area. Your pretectal area or region. Okay. That pretectal area is just at the level of the superior colliculus. It actually forms the superior colliculus. That's that bump that sits on the outside of the dorsal portion of the midbrain, and it's involved in vision. There's going to be another nucleus that we need to label here. What's the name of the nucleus that's involved in pupillary constriction and lens accommodation? Yeah, Edinger-Westphal. So let's go ahead and we'll draw in Edinger-Westphal. Edinger-Westphal nucleus is right here, just like that. Okay, so that's going to be the parasympathetic nucleus that cranial nerve number 3 uses. Right? So let's see if we can trace this back. We have a flashlight, and when you do the flashlight test, what happens is you do this test in dark light or dim light, and in dim light you would expect your pupils to be great big around, right? So you're going to have dilated pupils because it's dark. That's at the start of the test. take your flashlight and you go ahead and shine it into the right eye. My flashlight. I'm shining the flashlight into the right eye only. What would I expect to happen to the right and left pupils? Yeah, both constrict. So even though the left eye isn't seeing increased light, the left eye has a pupillary constriction as well. So I get constriction of the right pupil, and I also get constriction of the left pupil. Okay, this has a name. For the right pupillary constriction, since it got direct light by the flashlight, this is called the direct response. Okay, but the left eye never saw the increased light, but it's still constricted. So this is called your consensual response. Okay, so direct response, that eye saw the flashlight, so you would expect that pupil to constrict. But in addition to right pupillary constriction, you also get left pupillary constriction, and that's called your consensual response. And what I'd like to do with the diagram below is just kind of draw out how that happens. So in looking at this, no different than what we've seen before. We have, this is the right eye. So I'm going to go ahead and take my flashlight and I'm going to shine it in the right eye. Okay. Shining the flashlight in the right eye is going to result in both the nasal and the temporal retina receiving light input. Okay, what we've seen before is that temporal retina optic nerve comes down, stays ipsilateral for the optic tract, synapses with the lateral geniculate nucleus. Okay, and then the nasal retina crosses over in the optic chiasm and synapses with the contralateral geniculate nucleus. Okay, that's what we've seen so far before. What I didn't tell you is that not all of these axons from cranial nerve number 2 synapse with the nucleus. Some of them veer off and synapse here in the pretectal region. Okay, so so the temporal retina comes down, stays ipsilateral, hits the ipsilateral lateral geniculate nucleus, but some of the axons actually keep on going to the level of the midbrain and they synapse in the pretectal region. Same thing happens on the opposite side. The nasal retina comes down, crosses over in the optic chiasm. Most of the axons synapse with the lateral geniculate nucleus of the thalamus, but there are some of the axons that come off and synapse at the level of the midbrain in the pretectal region. Once these axons synapse in the pretectal region, cell bodies send out axons that synapse with the Ettinger-Westphal nucleus ipsilaterally, as well as the contralateral Ettinger-Westphal nucleus. That happens on both sides. So ipsilateral projections as well as contralateral projections. Okay. So you can see that the Ettinger-Westphal nucleus has been simulated bilaterally, just by shining the flashlight in one eye or the other. So you have the Ettinger-Westphal nucleus has axons that are going to come out here and perform the action, the parasympathetic action for cranial nerve 3, and that is to stimulate the ciliary body All right, I'm better. Ciliary body, as well as the sphincter pupillae, causing pupillary constriction. Oh. Okay, and that's going to happen bilaterally. So everybody see how it gets bilateral? So there's a direct response to the flashlight and a consensual response. The consensual response happens through the midbrain by using Edinger-Westphal nucleus and pretectal area. Questions? Okay, moving on, last piece. Now we're going to look at clinical implications for the pupillary light reflex. Like I said, you can use the pupillary light reflex to predict damage to a specific cranial nerve, whether it be cranial nerve number 3 or number 2, depending on what you see when you do the test. So again, this is going to be the pupillary light reflex. This is where we're going to start, and for our purposes, the test is always going to start. We'll start up here in dim light. So you're going to have pupils that are great big around. What we're going to do is, and when you do this test, you want to shine the flashlight in both eyes to get a conclusive result. You shouldn't just do it in one eye. And the first scenario that we're going to look at is going to be a left cranial nerve 2 defect. So in other words, cranial nerve 2 has been here. So on the it's actually on the left side. So there's no cranial nerve 2 here. It's been wiped out. Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at. So if I take the flashlight and I shine it in the right eye, I'm going to do that here. And there's a left cranial nerve 2 defect. What's going to happen to the pupils? The right and left pupils after I shine the flashlight in the right eye with a left cranial nerve 2 defect. What should happen? Anybody? So I'm looking for constriction. So the right will constrict, and the left will too. Yeah, because it's crossed over. Okay, let's look at that. So both the right and the left constrict. So it's kind of like here. If I shone the flashlight in the right eye, even if there's a defect here, if I've shown the flashlight in the right eye, I'm still going to get constriction of both because cranial nerve 3 is intact. Okay, if cranial nerve 3 wasn't intact, that's a little bit different. But shining the flashlight here, this cranial nerve is intact on the right side. On the left side, it's not. That still results in constriction of both the right and the left because of the direct and consensual response. Does that make sense? All right, now what happens then if I do the test again, start over, and I've got dim light, my pupils are great big. Okay, but this time I'm going to shine the flashlight in the left eye. What should I see? Right eye constrict. Okay, so let's look at. So I have one answer that is the right eye stays dilated and the left eye constricts. Is that what, or the right eye constricts? Right eye constricts? Right eye constricts? Anybody else? Let's look at that. So I have a left cranial nerve 2 defect. That means there's absolutely no light getting through right here. Okay? Now, instead of shining the flashlight in the right eye, I've shined the flashlight here in the left eye. What should happen? Nothing. That's it. That's it. That's exactly it. Correct? No response because no light is getting through because cranial nerve 2 is broken on the left side. So what you see is no constriction. Okay? So now you can see the importance of having to shine the flashlight in both eyes. Because if you just shone it in the right eye the first time and you have a left cranial nerve 2 defect, you would have never known there was a problem, right? You had to shine it in the other eye to detect the presence of that defect for cranial nerve 2. Yes, Emmy.
What is like consensual response of the right pupil?
Consensual response of the right pupil. Okay, so in order to get consensual response of the right pupil, I would have to have light get into the system. If my defect is here, okay, let's say that my defect is a right cranial nerve defect. Right cranial nerve's gone. No light gets through here. Now, how could I have a consensual response if no light gets through?
I was also thinking from the other eye.
Right? But there's no light shown in this eye. So let's just imagine that I'm looking at, I have a right cranial nerve 2 defect. The left cranial nerve 2 is intact. But the only eye that's seeing the light is the right. You see how the left doesn't see any. So unless light can get through here, I can't have a consensual response. Does that make sense? And then flip it around. So same thing here. I'm shining the light. If I shine the light in the left eye only, and there's no light shown here, no light gets through the system. So there's no response. This blocks all information from coming into the system. It's monocular blindness. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's look at a cranial nerve 3 defect. In this particular case, I'm looking at a left cranial nerve 3 defect. And when I start the test, pupils are great, big around. Okay, so in this particular case, the left cranial nerve, the third cranial nerve. So there's no Edinger-Westphal, there's no oculomotor, there's no nothing there. Okay, I'm going to start out by shining the flashlight in the right eye. I shine the flashlight in the right eye. What kind of response should I get from the right eye? Constriction. Does everybody see that? Nothing wrong with the right eye. It's going to work just fine. Now, shine the flashlight in the right eye, but there's a left cranial nerve 3 defect. Cranial nerve 3 isn't working. What should I see in the left eye? Dilated. Right. Because cranial nerve 3 isn't working, so it's not there to constrict. So you lose the consensual response because cranial nerve 3 isn't working on that side. Okay. Did I lose everybody? I think there's some people who got it. But anybody have any questions? Need help understanding that? We good? Yeah?
Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
With those axons from the central area to the western would those ever be affected specifically?
So, you know,
Like, just they cross.
so realize that the pretectal region is at the dorsal portion of the midbrain, and the blood supply for the midbrain is coming up ventrally. So even when you have like a lesion, a blood supply issue, usually not because of that. Sometimes if you have a brain injury, you'll see dilated pupils because of that. But that's specific to like a hit on the head, like a physical brain injury or shearing forces, the coup counter coup of like hitting your head when you have a brain injury. Sometimes with a brain injury and also bleeds, you'll see a blown pupil or a dilated pupil. That's really the only time it could possibly get there. But in a regular stroke presentation, not really. Okay? Any other questions? Yeah?
Could you show how the cranial nerve deficit is staying on the last page, going through the lines?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Okay, let's look at that. So, what I'm looking at here is a left cranial nerve 3 deficit. That means that this thing coming out of the Edinger-Westphal, that's your cranial nerve 3. My lesion is right here. Okay, it can be anywhere along cranial nerve 3. So this side, this cranial nerve coming here on the left is gone. Okay, so when I shine the flashlight in the right eye, everything works, everything's coming. I get the signal all the way to the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. But it can't work because that's where the lesion is. So I get no pupillary constriction on this side, but this side works just fine. There's nothing wrong with it. Does that make sense now? Okay, good. Anybody else? Okay, let's look to see what happens then if we take the flashlight and shine it in the left eye with a left cranial nerve 3 defect. So start out with your pupil, great big old and dim light here. Okay, shine the flashlight in the left eye. What would I expect in the right eye? Cranial nerve 2 is intact. Cranial nerve 3 on the left is blown. What would I expect in the right eye? Right constriction, right? Everything on the right side is still intact. So this is the consensual response that I'd expect to see. Now, how about when I shine the flashlight in the left eye? It's still dilated. No change whatsoever, right? Because even though light's coming in that eye, it's cranial nerve number 2 is intact. It's the third cranial nerve that's blown. Questions? Are we good with that? Takes a little while. Go ahead and
Show it on the other page.
absolutely, sure. Let me pull that back up here. Okay. So, here you go. My lesion's in exactly the same place. My lesion's going to be right here. Okay? This time, I've shown the flashlight in this eye. Okay? So light's going to come in. It's going to reach lateral nucleus of the thalamus. You're going to synapse here in the pretectal region. It's going to make the synapses with the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. The right eye constricts. The left eye tries, but there's a lesion. Got it?
I get it now, yeah.
Okay, Morgan?
Do you not get any, like, consensual response from the superior cortex?
Well, you do. You get that. You get it to the level of the Edinger-Westphal nucleus. So everything in here is intact. It's this nerve, the lower motor neuron, is blown.
So the part of the superior cortex on this side that goes to the like functional Edinger-Westphal wasn't helping.
So that's all working. That's working fine. But it stimulates the Edinger-Westphal. But it's this part that's broken. This part doesn't work anymore. So you won't get any response because it's not. It's gone. It's not working. That's the part. And that's the differential diagnosis between cranial nerve 2 versus cranial nerve 3. Okay? I think once you play with it a little bit, and we'll have some cases that'll look at it too, so I just need you to work through it and think about it, because it takes a little bit of thought. 2 different cranial nerves. Okay, let's go ahead and I have one